guys can hear me, right?
Yep,
Yep.
you're good.
Okay, great, wonderful. So yeah, so just want to keep this short, and we might do two parties. You saw some PowerShell led by Kyle, wonderfully. But if that can't happen, we'll definitely push it to another time, because I want you all to have some experience with the stuff that we're going over today, because it's really important. Because Google and OSINT tools in general are the first thing that you guys do, or anyone does at any time. In terms of hacking or offensive security. Okay, so how do we find these needles in the haystack? So Google, or really anything, whenever you look at a vector to, um, uh, sorry, the dog, exploit or even attack in general, you have to find information about that thing. Um, because if not, you'd be shooting in the breeze. You'd be doing stuff completely blind. And you might even spend time doing something forever. So um, we can use these tools, OSINT, open source intelligence. We can use these tools to get a better grasp on the things that we actually need to exploit. So Google is a wonderful tool to do so, and that is actually called Google Dorking. It comes from this idea, like these people, so-called dorks, who are often, I guess, ignorant, lazy, or unaware that their data is being searchable or is publicly out there. And honestly, Google is a collection of stuff that's mostly that, or I'd say almost mostly all of that. So, okay, so I think I defined some of them really quick, but just to go over it, OSINT is open source, and footprinting. I am not going to go into this today, but just a primer here. It's just the pre-attack phase, so it includes OSINT, it includes recon, it includes a bunch of other stuff. But just being more specific, we're going to focus on OSINT. So why should we care? You're going to need information anytime you attack, like I said. Anytime you perform any kind of attack, so social engineering attack. So if you find some information on an employee or a person or people in general that are crucial in gaining a foothold into a system, um, you're going to be using OSINT. So stuff like social media. I mean, sometimes even people put stuff like physically on their house or in front of their business posters and stuff. Things that you can gather, information you can gather. Start putting these puzzle pieces together that might be keys for you in the future to getting farther in your exploitations. So of course, weak and hidden passwords. Employees are people putting sticky notes of their passwords on their desks or hung up in their houses. I'm sure many of you or most of you have seen the one-off person who writes down their password either on their hand or something, or you've seen it before. You've seen it. Um, Web vulnerabilities in general. If you are on a website and you can tell that a certain website looks uh, vulnerable to something. Either it's using an outdated version of PHP or some kind of vulnerable version of something. Um, you can exploit it. You can think, oh, I might be able to exploit it from there. As well as you can, either physically look at the place or do some sort of scan to figure out the layout of certain network devices or IT devices. So, what kind of computers do people have? What kind of operating systems are we talking about? Routers, switches, all that stuff. That's all open source intelligence, or even footprinting as a whole. So I'm just going to ask you all. I went over a couple things. I'm asking you all if does anyone have any other ideas other than social media to gather information in general. I mean, let's say information on people. You can just butt in here. I don't really mind.
Dumpster diving.
Perfect. Dumpster diving is a wonderful example. Do you want to explain what that is?
So there's a lot of corporation and businesses in which don't get rid of their data safely. So either paperwork or kind of invoices or any kind of IT documentation of different tools that they're using, maybe like the router, specific router or a specific version of a switch that they have. All these kind of information is very useful when we try to infiltrate a system. So if they don't shred it, you could always get that out of a garbage can, and you could always just go behind their building and look through their trash and see what you could find with that.
Perfect. Yeah, exactly. I mean, just stuff that's quote publicly there. Dumpster diving is totally illegal, and actually, some of the stuff, if you use it incorrectly here, gets into illegal territory. Even though the information is out there and available, doesn't. Sorry, did someone just unmute their mic? Say something. I think Raya. Oh, okay, good. Okay. Um, Anyways, yeah, so yeah, even though the information is out there, doesn't mean that it's legal or ethical to use it. Like dumpster diving is a perfect example. Anyone else? I mean, that's exactly what I'm looking for. We'll move on from there. Okay. Okay, so Google Dorking, I kind of described it a little bit, but just a little bit of review. Dorking comes from the term, people who disclose information that they don't really want to, ignorantly or by accident. And Google Dorking takes advantage of that. So we can search for this data, um, albeit somewhat publicly or publicly. We can search for this data to use in our attacks. So let's get started. Let's get some hands-on stuff here. So some of the commands you can use right into Google. If you guys want to pull up Google, just like, have to have this or whatever. The first, and I think my favorite thing, at least that I use a lot, is file type. So I wish I had an example of how to use this. Actually, screw it. We'll just do it in my browser here. How about this? Can everyone see this? Actually,
Yeah, we can see.
okay, great. So just, directly in Google here. Hopefully I'm not showing anything. Nah, this is fine. Yeah, so I can type, I want to search for, let's say, some books, right? Like books on, I don't know, mathematics. Well, like math books, right? If I type that straight in, it gives me a bunch of books, thankfully curated by Google in a nice little format here. But you see, there's like links to Amazon and YouTube videos, and just tons of just books. But if I want to find a book that's maybe free or published out there, that's quote unquote free, but it's harder to look for. I can, search for, let's say, books from the PDF format. So I would type in math books, file type, and then look, it already comes up here, but colon, PDF. If everyone gets that, I just want to make sure everyone has that. Okay, sounds like it. Great, and if if you hit enter, you see all of these, or pretty much all of these. I've just added a space. Give me 1 second. There we go. All of these. So don't put a space in between. That was my mistake. Yeah, all of these are PDFs. So you see this little extension here. Every single one of the lists, the queries that Google queried for us are PDFs. So you can imagine if you type in more specific titles here, you can find, for the most part, PDFs of those titles. Now, if I continue, so I typed in math books, right? Let's say if I type in, for example, sailboats in the Chesapeake. I'm from Maryland. I just wanted to have a little fun here. I'm from Maryland, and I live actually in the middle of the Chesapeake Bay, which is just a body of water. But if I want to find pictures, like let's say I can go to images, I can find pictures of sailboats in the Chesapeake Bay. But I know for sure that this isn't where I'm from. Like these are not pictures from where I live. I mean, you can get more specific, but what Google is taking from here is Google is going, okay, find me listings of searches that return everything like a word, specifically sailboats, and then a word in, a word Chesapeake, and a word Bay. So all results that include these. I mean, it may be the results that include these the most up top or the most searched for up top, but Google is just returning, okay, so this and this and this and this, rather than sailboats in Chesapeake Bay. Now, if I want to be very specific, I can put this in quotes, and I'm sure a lot of you guys have done this, you know, putting things in quotes. It'll search for exactly this text. So it'll return a text of sailboats in the Chesapeake Bay, right? So then if I go to images, this is looking a lot more specific. I mean, not exactly specific because it may just have it in the text in the text of where it's from, but it's getting more specific. So if I want to search for, let's say, sailboats or Chesapeake Bay, type, yeah, or Chesapeake Bay, it'll return results of sailboats or the second result, Chesapeake and Bay. If that makes sense. This is, I mean, Google is really powerful here, and I think you might all be starting to see that you can use this search tool as like as almost like a command interface, because it has the capabilities of being like fully a command interface. I mean, you guys have probably done, or you all have probably done like 1 + 2, and then it brings up a calculator, right? That's all from just this one line, and it's brilliant because you can search for a lot of really crazy stuff. You can also search for cache pages. If anyone knows what cache, I can't even spell ACHE. Wow, cache pages. Google caches some pages, like it'll save it in their server so that it doesn't have to like keep looking for the page over and over again. I don't know how to get into it without explaining all of how Google searches for stuff or different search engines search for stuff. But yeah, you can search for just cache pages. So if I search for like, I don't know, cache, let's see, oh, I don't know, www.dorkscybersec. I really should have created examples here. Yeah, so we can't see it here because Berk Cybersec isn't up anymore, but it would return a result of Berk Cybersec's cached website. So I guess I could see that. Yeah, so this is the cache results of YouTube. Anyways, so some cool stuff, and in title, this is the last really cool thing. So in title, great. So obviously you've seen me search up some books. This is again hypothetical. I've never actually done that before. So like in title, like let's say I don't know, CTF competitions. Let's make it specific. Then it'll return in the title of the URL, and this is actually kind of an interesting result that I'll explain later. In the title of the URL or the link, I mean just any kind of title here, it'll return CTF competitions. So like, you know, it'll make it really easy to find them for me. Okay, so back to the actual presentation. So if you can't find, I mean, there's a slew of commands. If you're looking for something specific, chances are Google has a command for that. Stuff like phone book results, stocks, even. You know, I'm feeling lucky. You can use a command for that. Safe search. Like there's a whole list. I mean, I couldn't have enough time to go through all of them today. But yeah, I would just again use Google. You'll find these things. You know, just type in Google Dorking commands, and I'm sure the first result you'll find is a PDF or image of commands. All right, so examples. So I just want to go through. Oh my gosh, this is so annoying. Okay, I want you all to try this. We'll see how long this takes. If not, if you can't get all of them, I understand. But I'll give it like, let's say, I don't know. I'll give it like a minute or two for the first one. I'll give it a minute. So if you can find files for type PD or PowerPoint, give it some time. I just want everyone to have some experience using these Cool. Did anyone have any trouble finding that? Just speak or forever hold your peace. No, okay, that looks great. All right.
Hey, Elon, I'm sorry.
Yes.
I joined a little late. Can you give me a quick where are we? What are we searching?
So go to Google.
It's a regular browser, is it?
Yep, just right into whatever browser.
You're not in Cali or anything, just a regular
Nope,
Google search.
this is totally on any. You can do this on your phone even, if you're not on a computer.
No, I'm on my PC, but I just want to
Okay.
know where are we? Just go in any browser, right? Okay.
Yep, as long as it's Google.
Okay. Follow what you're doing. Okay.
Yep. So we're just doing some examples now. I can go back. I can walk you through these. If you want to just hold tight, or you can just look up Google
Yeah.
cheat sheet or something. I don't know.
Okay.
So y'all probably got the first one, and I would say the second one. Did anyone have any trouble with the second one? Finding logon pages, like logins. No? Okay, wow. I was expecting, yeah, very nice, very nice. Did anyone find the command? This one's a little bit tricky. I should have put this at the end, but finding the phone number for the president of PACE. You can actually use this command phone book. If you were a little bit lost there. Cyberbeat, I believe your mic is on.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Did anyone get it? I'm just you don't have to post the answer. Sure.
Yeah, I didn't get it either.
Yeah, sure. How about we do this? I'll just do it. So we'll do. Okay. So the question is, all right. So we'll do phone book, and then the president of our university, Marvin Kurzlov, and it gives us a list of stuff here, but in every single one of these, most likely returns a phone number of sorts. But if you scroll down, you can see the white pages, and yeah, that might be it. Pretty sure that's it. But yeah, so it's pretty powerful. I mean, this is listed publicly, and white pages is a OSINT. Really, just find information on people in general. If you haven't looked for it, it's really useful. Did someone just join? Okay, great. So we'll go back here.
I got a phone number at 1866 PACE001.
That might it might be it. It sounds maybe that might be it. I mean, so the thing is, like, these examples I wanted to create just to have practice with the it's not really for the exam for the outcome, but sure, he might have multiple phone numbers. But if you want to try and search for yourself, I encourage that. Do some research on you, see what your kind of information is out there. See how your skills stack up here. Okay, so did anyone find the command for stock? Find stock. I thought this one's really neat. If not, it's just literally just type stock : and then if anyone knows the Apple stock ID, I believe it's just APPL. E.
Yeah, AAPL.
WAPL. That's it. All right. Yeah, I just want to give everyone some time to do that. Okay. This one's a little bit more fun. So there's a bunch of numerical, like Google tries to look for regular expressions of certain numbers. So a sequence of numbers that have, a certain pattern of numbers followed by letters, followed by, whatever, sequence of strings, my bad. And actually, you can, if you type in the like a certain number, if you ever typed in a certain number, like on Google, it's like, oh, it thinks it's a phone number, or it thinks it's a some sort of address or something. There's a couple really useful ones, and one of those, which I think is really funny, is you can actually just find FAA airplane registration numbers, and it's the text. All you have to do is type in N199UA. But what that means is there's some sort of letter, and then one number, and then followed by 2 letters. It's really crazy. And then you can just find a list of every registration number. I won't go through all of it, but it's really useful for finding UPS tracking numbers. It's how, like, if you trying to track a package, you don't have to go through UPS's tracking page. You can just type in the number, and Google's like, oh, I know what this is. It's the same thing, the exact same thing. Okay, so I believe that's all of my fun examples. There's some resources. We're going to be posting this on the I guess the drive. We're migrating to SharePoint right now. Hopefully that'll be public to you all very soon. But when that does, it's going to all be on here as well as this recording. These links are really nice. OSINT, that link is really cool. Personally, is what I use because it has everything, or basically everything you can think of. Different search engines. Social media stuff. Obviously, that's super important. Metadata. I believe if anyone was here for the NCL training on Monday or yesterday, he went over some metadata examples. And this is just a list of metadata stuff. A bunch of really cool stuff. But I think, honestly, my favorite example and the most classic example of Google Dorking is you can find index pages. Has anyone heard of index pages? Like Google has, or you have when you have a website, there's an index. Anyone? Okay, well, the cool thing is you can actually do, and then I guess index of, what am I thinking? No, in title, what am I doing? There's a reason. It'll give you a listing of all of the index pages, either of people's machines or people's websites. Yeah, it's really interesting, and there's a lot of them. As you can see, there's about 25,000 results. Sorry, 25 million. I can't read. 25 million results of people's index pages. So if you do some more clever ordering of those terms, you can find some stuff that shouldn't really be found. Anyways, that just gives you a little taste of what you can do. Kind of mind-blowing here. All right, I think that concludes my section. Kyle, if you think you're going to have enough time, if you want to go for your PowerShell. Kyle?
Yep. Sorry, just 1 second. Just pulling up my stream. Installed on this computer. Sorry, just give me 1 second. Just pull it up online. On my desktop. Sorry, guys. So while we start, does anybody know anything about PowerShell? Yay or nay?
A little bit.
A little bit. Anybody else? We're just going over generally what PowerShell is because not a lot of people know. Okay, let me just pull up. Okay. All right, can you all see my screen?
Yep, you're good.
All right. I guess you've all seen this really briefly as Elon kind of like brushed through it, but this is a basic overview of PowerShell. Those of you who watched this last year, it's pretty much the same presentation, but we're just going to go through this briefly since we're kind of running up against time here. So let's start off here. So what is PowerShell? And what do you use to code in PowerShell? You use IDEs, so that's whether it's the built-in ones or the or like specific ones like VS Code. You use the command line. Is everybody here familiar with programming concepts?
A little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, so there are your functions, and then you have your commands, which are basically act like functions. There's some little bit of differences, but that's pretty much it. We have our variables, and we have .NET and Windows. So I will go over all of those in a few minutes. So, yeah, again, this is only a brief overview. We're not covering everything here. We don't have a lot of time. And if you have a question, Google it. We just had a whole presentation on that. Google it before asking, because 90% of the time, Google answered in like 2 words. All right. If you have a really complicated question, hit me up, tell me, ask me. That's great. But like, if you're asking like how to like list all the files, just quickly Google it because they'll give you a better explanation than I could ever give. All right. So what is the PowerShell language? The PowerShell language is built on something called the .NET framework. It kind of tells, it's like a multi-language tool that allows for interaction with Windows at the low level to easily create things like windows, text boxes, prompts, and a variety of other different things. But different languages use it. C# uses it, ASP.NET, PowerShell, VB.NET. Anything usually where you see a .NET tacked onto it runs like this. Now, there's a new one coming out called .NET Core, which is what PowerShell Core is built on. But in general, this is kind of what you see. Now, what this allows you to do is kind of, you can actually manipulate different .NET frameworks from different .NET languages. So if you have somebody that has a .NET out app, you can actually sort of interact with it with PowerShell at a very low level, which is kind of useful. But it's also from a system administration point, but it's also useful from a cybersecurity standpoint because you can use it to monitor applications, log applications, and see things at a very, very fundamental level to see if things integrity is violated. So just a kind of interest in there. So IDEs and editors. I'm just going to quickly brush through this because most of you should be somewhat comfortable with your IDEs. But the main way you use PowerShell is through the terminal. You see it on your Windows computer. You can look it up. That is the kind of like the big thing that you will use. Now, there's a new one Windows just released called Windows Terminal. That is what I would recommend using, but you can use the built-in ones as well. There's also the PowerShell ISE. It's a built-in IDE to every single Windows computer has it. If you're doing something and you from a system administration standpoint or a PowerShell standpoint, or a Windows security standpoint, if you get into a box, you'll always have an IDE there that you can use to code your PowerShell scripts, which is kind of useful. It's also kind of not great from a security, like a blue team standpoint, but it's there. It's them there to use it, so use it. It's actually pretty decent. And then Visual Studio Code, which is my personal favorite. I have it configured to do a lot of different stuff, but that's for another time. All right, so the terminal. It's kind of what you'll see. You'll see you got your command. You write your command or commandlet, and right there, and then basically you get your output just dumped to the console. It's like any other console you've ever used. And this is kind of where all code ends up being executed in a terminal. Whether you see it or not, this is kind of where all the code will end up. There's a lot of really cool PowerShell modules for logging in Windows Server and in the Windows regular. But again, that's a more advanced topic. But what you can end up doing is seeing every command run, no matter how obfuscated it is, no matter how much somebody tries to hide what the command does, you will still end up being able to see everything that is being run, which is kind of cool. And then this is the PowerShell ISE. So this is the built-in editor. Again, it's really useful. You get to write your shell scripts up here, and then when you execute them, you can see it all down here, and you can kind of interact with the code that you wrote down here as well, manipulating objects. So when you kind of mess around with it up there, everything will kind of go with it. It's kind of cool. Boom. Visual Studio Code. I mean, it's a bare bones IDE. I'm pretty sure most of you used it. Has anybody not? Does anybody? Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, bro.
Yeah, I don't think so. I mean, I know about this, but I've not used this.
Okay, so Visual Studio Code is what I would recommend everybody start using for almost 90% of your coding. The only languages I wouldn't use it for is probably like heavy C# development, heavy C++ development, Java development. You can use it for small Java development, but like heavier developments, I wouldn't use it. But if you're making like a one-off program or something like that, this should be your IDE of choice. That or Atom or something of that nature. These things are bare bones IDEs, and the whole idea is that they're extensible. You can add all the features you want in, or you can write your own feature that you want to put in there. There's a whole bunch of PowerShell additions that you add in, so I have them all installed. That help me to do everything from debug the code so I can step through all my code line by line, as well as see all the functions and what it can do, along with executing and doing some actually runtime analysis. But there's also others. I have Java extensions in there. I've got C# extensions. I've got Bash. I've got them all. Again, you can install them all for whatever you want. It's kind of nice. I recommend everybody starts using it and get comfortable with it. For your daily life, it makes everything easier. All right. Sorry, we're just jumping through this. I just don't want to kind of running up against the clock here. But some general knowledge that you should know. All right, everything is an object. Literally everything. All right, so whether it's a file is an object containing a whole bunch of metadata about it along with the contents of it. Every folder is basically a giant object. It's a giant tree linking to other folders and the files and all of that. And you can actually kind of map through it recursively if you want it. It's really cool. Pipelines move objects, not strings like Linux. So if anybody's comfortable in the Bash shell, you know a pipeline will kind of move everything as just a giant block of text from one function to another. And PowerShell, it actually moves it as an object. So we'll have a whole bunch of metadata that's hidden behind it, along with everything in that tree, which is useful, and you can do some kind of nutty stuff with it. But you can kind of like use it to manipulate a large chunk of folders or files. You can set read times back. I have a script there that kind of use if we had more time, which I can make a file, edit it, change everything, and then run the script, and it will make the file look like it's coming like 4 years ago, make the last edit time like 3 years ago, and it'll make it look like that file's been sitting there on your computer for years. It's kind of cool. There's some other things you can do with it, but that's kind of the idea. Everything's an object, and we can manipulate it like that. Now, there are rules. We'll go over that in a second, but there's like module names and parameter names should generally follow the standards. And if you're comfortable in a Bash shell, you know the standard commands like cd, ls. We have those in PowerShell, but they're actually aliased to different command names. So cd is get child item, ls is get content. You shouldn't be using those in scripts. You should be using the full name. But you know, to each their own. But your PowerShell IDE will yell at you if you do that. And as I was saying earlier, there's two flavors of PowerShell. There's PowerShell Core and PowerShell Windows. Windows has reached end of life, or not end of life, but end of development. It's considered feature complete, and there's no more updates except for very big security updates. Everything is now moving to PowerShell core. So what your one script can run on Windows, Linux, Mac, and do the same thing on all those platforms, which is kind of crazy as we start getting there. You're missing some of the more sysadmin heavy things that are in PowerShell Windows, like PowerShell desired state configuration, which is way, way beyond the scope of this. But this will allow you to write scripts to like get computer names, to try to ping computers, to kind of like do the basic sysadmin to basic medium sysadmin and security tasks with only one script, you know. So it kind of like saves you a whole lot of work, and it's kind of cool. Now, some more information. PowerShell is an interpreted language like Python, so that means it's compiled in real time, so it's line by line compiled, and in just general, it gets kind of quote unquote converted into C#. You can write modules and functions in C# and have it run through PowerShell, which is kind of cool. You can actually integrate C# code directly into PowerShell scripts if you're good at that. And since it's a .NET language, there's near seamless compatibility between the two, so you can kind of flip-flop back and forth as you see needed, which is really, really interesting. Now, there's also one other thing, is that there's like several different ways to do any one task in PowerShell. So if I needed to, let's just say, create an object or a variable, I can do it either through the create variable function, which, while it might not seem useful to you, it's very useful if you have long pipelines and you need to tree the pipeline, so split it into two. You sometimes need that. And then the other way is just to standard call it like in Python, except the variable header is a $, but you will see that farther on. Now, commandlets and modules. So a module is a collection of commandlets. A commandlet is a function, and so a module would be something like Active Directory, SQL, some type of something that I would create, something called the Snipe IT module, and they just basically, it's like a class that contains a whole set of functions in there. So Active Directory would have like get AD user, delete AD user, get new AD user. That's what kind of you'll see. And then they'll have a series of parameters in there that are kind of standardized. Like user will always be called user no matter where you are. They should not be changing it around to person or this or that. It should always be user, because that's what a user is. Yeah. And they follow rules of syntax. And there's a repository that you can access. So like apt get update or yum or something like that, PowerShell has their version. If you type in install module, you can install a module. You can also, if you type in get module, you can kind of look up modules. It's kind of useful. And then when you want to add it to your session, you write import module. Very useful. But again, it's a little bit more advanced, but then it's pretty useful to know. So variables. There's two ways, as I was saying. There's just putting a $sign in front of the word. It's not like Python where you can just type the word and set it equal to something. You have to put a $sign in front of it that specifies what it is. Or you can use create variable and follow the parameters that is set and to create the variable as well. Again, it's like Python in the fact that there's dynamic typing. You don't have to do anything. It will automatically set its type. You can force a type with like Python, except that you would put it in brackets and say whatever you want it to be, an int, date, time, or something of that sort. These are all .NET variables. So if you ever look up like the .NET variable typing, that is what these variables are. So that's kind of saves you if you know C#'s variables, if you know Visual Basics, or you know ASP.NET's, they're all the same. So that's kind of like saves you a learning curve if you're already familiar. Variables can act as both a pointer and as like your general variable. So you can actually point to the same memory location if you set it up correctly. Sometimes it doesn't work, since again these are very dynamically typed, so sometimes it will try to assume what you're doing and it'll get it wrong. But you can actually have multiple variables point to the same memory location. That's a more higher level programming concept. If anybody is familiar with it, it can be useful in certain situations. And then there's a couple reserved items. If you use $env : and you just start tabbing, there's a whole bunch of default properties in there. So if you can get like your computer name, how much memory, who's logged in, anything of that sort is all there. Every computer is a little bit different, but generally that's what you kind of see. And then in a pipeline, you don't kind of know what your variable is that's moving across. So they created a default one. It's $_. And that's kind of the variable that's going to be moving through your pipeline. So if I said get child item, so that gets me everything that's in a folder. And then I basically put it in a pipe and said for each item, and then I would use the $_.name, so each file name in there, add .jpeg to it. That's kind of how you would do it. Again, I have some examples, but we're running up against the clock, so I'm just gonna jump through it. Feel free to message me afterward, and we can definitely talk about it. .NET, so it's a complete framework built on Windows. So Windows is heavily built on .NET, so you can actually interface with several of the core components of Windows and make edits that you would not have normally seen. And you can use that to kind of like tailor your Windows experience in a way. You can do little things like edit your background images and pipe in things from Outlook into your background if you wanted. It's weird stuff that you would not experience. You can kind of do it since you get a really fundamental way of editing it. It's an open API, so all the code that supports .NET, I was just saying, you can call that and get responses back. It's very useful. I would look it up. There's way too much for me to explain. There's literally thousands and thousands and thousands of different APIs you can call to get different information. Windows documentation is one of the best. We'll look at it in a second. It will basically hand everything to you on a silver platter. And it shares code, so you have to write less. You know, everybody doesn't want to write a 250,000 line piece of code if it's already written. So you might as well save the time. All right, so that's that presentation there. So let's take a quick look at it. It's just so. All right, so let's see. They can't actually keep changing this around year from year. Let's just go here. So these are kind of your like standard, your .NET there. Let's do .NET framework. So these are all your variable types. All of these are functions you can call and variable types that you can use. And these are all the higher level. So if we wanted to go and look at, let's see, file. So you have your IO file class. Let's just go there. So this contains all information on how to interact with files and what functions you can do to files and all of that. And all of this is reusable in PowerShell along with C#, ASP.NET. But it lets you do some very fundamental changes to the files, which is very useful. So you can add data into them, you can manipulate them. File attributes will let you kind of set like something as a hidden file in your system. You can kind of set it as read-only. You can set it as something that can be wiped out. You can set it so if you set it as a temporary file, when your system automatically goes through and cleans up it, temporary data, it will get deleted. There's classes like file info, which is what I used to set something as older than it was. So what I would do is I basically call the class or the object of the file, and basically within the file info, I was able to set part of the class. I was able to set the last access time, last write times, all of that to several years ago, and it kind of hides everything. And it's really interesting because with this, you can do a lot of, from a security standpoint, you can start doing some stuff for users that kind of don't have the logging or the infrastructure in place to like know what's going on. You can set files to look old, so you can set your scripts and whatever tools you're using to make them look way older than they are, so people kind of tend to ignore them. There's other things you can do, set them hide. You can set symlinks if you want, so you can link one place on your drive to a place that's that might be somewhere else on your drive hidden, or you could set it to somewhere that's not even on your drive at all. So if a user clicks on it, it takes them to a remote share. It's very interesting, but again, there's a lot to go there. I think I'm running up against the clock here. I think we're done at what, 4:20, right? Is that correct, Elon?
425, but
Yeah.
425.
All right, so yeah. So does anybody have any questions, comments, concerns? Did I go too fast? I probably did, but
as a beginner, where would you recommend to start? What documentation should they read or anything like that?
where I would recommend starting is not even reading the documentation. Open up the PowerShell console on your computer, type in ls, press enter, and start from there. All right, so there's a command called get command, and it will list you every single command that you have installed. I have more than most because I have a lot of my extra modules installed, but it lists every single command on your computer. There's some of this might be a little overkill, yes, but what you should know is that a lot of these commands have a lot of use on your computer, and you can use it to kind of learn what to do. So if you wanted to, you could start with lscd and then pipe it somewhere and like figure out the command. Don't try to spend all the time trying to like read through the documentation like line by line. Start messing with the objects. Start trying to come up with ideas of how to like navigate your shell. Just live in the shell for a little bit. Be a part of the shell. Be one with the shell. It's a lot more descriptive than your standard environment. So if I wanted to say, for example, let's go to I don't know, this folder right here. How would I tell somebody to get there? I'd be like, click on this, click on OneDrive, then click on programming notes. If I gave somebody, I could just give them this. I can give them a command. It would be cd along with the location. Boom, it would take you there. Mine has spaces in it, so it kind of like bricks everything. Doesn't like spaces, but there you go. Takes you right to your folder. You don't have to describe anything. You just say run that command, and then you kind of can see what's in the folder. And yeah, again, that's what my recommendation is. Everybody learns differently though. Kind of like struggle a little bit, then look it up. Say, let's just say I got to do something in the shell. Let's quickly look it up. If we can't figure it out with get command, just Google it really quick. But try to like spend as much time in the shell as you can, because that's where you will learn. You don't learn from reading. You don't learn from writing. You learn from doing. Cool. Anybody else?
Kyle, what is that thing after ls? You said get command? One word?
Oh yeah, get command. It's so every variable in PowerShell. If I type in get verb, so these are all the approved verbs for PowerShell. There are your standard ones, so your common ones: add, clear, copy, close. Every function or commandlet has to start with those, and they kind of describe what the function does. So add will add something, new will create something new, get will get something from somewhere, join will join something together, and stuff like this will allow you to already know what the command will do. So if I have get command, it will get me the command. If I had add command, it would let me add a command. If I had, what's a fun one? Convert to. I mean, it's pretty self-explanatory.
So when you said get command, it showed you a list of all the commands, is it?
Yep. It gets you every
when I
single
tried it,
command.
it's not giving me the same result when I tried that in my PowerShell.
What do you get?
It's giving me some kind of error messages. Like,
are you opening up CMD?
No. I'm in Windows PowerShell.
It's get dash command.
Yeah, it's get dash command.
Oh, the
It's,
get
there's-
dash command. Okay.
Yeah, there's
Yeah.
always a dash in between the verb and the noun. That's kind of how PowerShell's formatted.
See,
Is.
now I see it. Okay.
Yep.
Now it's giving me, because it gave me a message in red. So
Yeah,
how
the message-
different is this? How different are the commands in PowerShell versus Linux? Because I'm pretty, I mean, I don't know if I can say I'm comfortable, but I've taken cloud computing, the AWS. For the last 3-4 months, I've been writing a lot of Linux commands, and so I'm a bit familiar. But PowerShell, I have no experience at all.
I wouldn't say it's the same. A lot of the functions that you'll know have kind of gotten aliased. So if we type in get alias here, you can see all the commands that are aliased to sort of Linuxy type deals. So you see ls in there. You'll see
apt-get.
yeah,
apt-get
apt-get is not
update.
mapped in there. That's
Okay.
not. That's because to
Strictly
install a
Linux,
module,
right?
it's install module. Oh, I spelled that wrong. Install module. That's how I would install something. Or I just pipe it into the session. But that's generally how you'd go about it. Or I could use wget, which it maps to invoke web request. There's a couple different things there.
No matter what, when we type, we have to have a dash in between the commands, right?
So
Pretty
it's
much,
again
more or
the
less.
format for the way that every command is supposed to be function or structured is verb dash noun. It has to be an approved verb followed by a noun. So that noun can kind of describe. You could see like get grid view, remove item, item property. You see all of that type of stuff there. And when we look at the aliases, so the verb will describe what it does, and then the noun will kind of be similar along a lot of them, but it'll kind of tell you what you're manipulating, what you're doing. So you have an idea. You don't have to read the documentation to understand what remove PS drive is. You can understand that it's removing a drive from your computer, or a PowerShell drive from your computer. Set time zone, set your time zone. The idea of PowerShell is to be as verbose as possible, so you don't have to read the documentation for the first time. Maybe sometimes you do, but the idea is that you can, if you want to quickly read through something, you can understand it. It should be like reading something. Albeit very technical, but you'd be reading something. Let's see. This is an NCL thing from a prior year. It's just something. It's just a quick script I wrote that kind of decodes what this is up here. This one's a little bit. There's a lot of detail to explain in that. Let me see if I have something that's better here.
It looks like JSON, is it?
Which this?
Yeah.
No, it's not JSON. It's PowerShell. I'm just gonna see if I can find a better one. That one's a little bit more oofed, hard to read. Let's see here. Damn it. So this is something I wrote for a friend. This one's kind of odd, but it compares two DNA sequences. He basically just gave me it, and so what you do is you run this. This is being run in 6. Sorry. Let's see, 5. So you'll see what it does is it compares the two DNA sequences and then will highlight the letters that are different. So you can see you got your standards there. So you have your commandlet or function. When it's built into the program, it's function. You don't need to follow the standards. I still do. It saves me some time. But so See, I put the commandlet bindings here. So that turns it from what is generally considered a function to a commandlet. So there's a whole bunch of now default commands there that are not necessarily in every other command. So if I wanted to go here, I'll get verbose, debug, error action, warning, all of that stuff, and pipeline variable that are not normally stored in a variable. They get kind of tacked on to my variable. Param, this lets me set parameters. There's like 3 different ways to make a function. I'm not going to go through them all, but there's kind of 3 different methods depending on what your function's doing to create them. There's your standard one that looks like C#, which I recommend everybody just uses. It's a little easier to understand. But yeah, so this, it's a for each loop. It looks pretty standard if you've done Java, except for the less than. To do less than, greater than, equal to, it's you do a dash and you say and all of that. There's your binary operators, but then there's like less than, greater than, let's see. So greater than or equal to, less than or equal to. That's how it works. Just look it up. It's pretty easy. There's a table full of it. And yeah, I mean, you kind of see, it looks very similar to every other programming language, I would assume. The way I'm writing it is very similar to like the Java-like syntax. So it should be readable. Anybody got any questions about that? Let's see if I can. Yeah, this is, I didn't realize I had this one here, but this is an example of using C# in PowerShell code. This is all C# here. This is to bypass certificate error that you have when you don't have a correctly signed cert on a website. So this will help you bypass it, and then you kind of just bring it into your session as the module that you created. So server callback validation, you can see that I create the object in one place, and then I basically call this object and I call the function ignore, and it runs that function, which is kind of cool. And then more PowerShell code. Most of it's commented out, but you just kind of see it right here. This actually interfaces with an API on a website. That is the asset tracking database for PayStudy for PACE. So